Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Tonight, we descend into the haunting visions of Polaris by H.P. Lovecraft. This is not a mere retelling, it is a reimagined narration in English, reshaped to captivate and unsettle, bringing new life to a timeless tale of dreams, duty, and despair. Through the northern window of my chamber, the pole star burns with a light that feels unnatural, an unblinking sentinel in the endless hours of night. Autumn winds howl like curses from the north, and the swamp trees, their leaves blood red, whisper secrets to one another beneath the crooked horns of a dying moon. I sit at the casement, transfixed, while constellations drift across the heavens. Cassiopeia reels drunkenly from the heights. Charles Wain lumbers into view behind mist-choked branches that sway in the restless wind. Before dawn, Arcturus flickers red above the graveyard hill, and Coma Berenices shimmers faintly in the haunted east. Yet always Polaris remains, mocking, leering, its hideous wink like the eye of a mad god, straining to deliver a message long forgotten. Only when clouds veil its gaze can I rest. I recall vividly the night of the great aurora, when the swamp blazed with spectral fire. The heavens writhed with demon light, and when the brilliance gave way to clouds, I surrendered to sleep. It was then, beneath the waning horned moon, that I first beheld the city. Silent, dreamlike, it lay upon a plateau cradled by jagged peaks. Its walls, towers, and domes were carved from ghastly marble, gleaming pale in the eternal twilight. Along its streets rose solemn pillars, their crowns sculpted into the faces of grave, bearded men. The air was warm, unmoving, and above it all, 10 degrees from the zenith, the pole star glowed, watching. I gazed long upon that city, yet no dawn arrived. Aldebaran, red and restless, crawled along the horizon, and as it moved a quarter of its path, life stirred within the marble streets. Figures robed in strange garments, noble yet familiar, walked abroad. Beneath the horned moon they spoke wisdom in a tongue I understood, though it was unlike any language I had ever known. When Aldebaran had passed halfway, silence returned, and the city fell once more into shadow. When I awoke, I was changed. The vision of that city was etched into my memory, and within my soul lingered a deeper, vaguer recollection, something I could not yet name. On cloudy nights, when sleep claimed me, I returned often to that place, sometimes beneath the waning moon, sometimes beneath a sun that never set, circling low upon the horizon. And on clear nights, Polaris glared down with renewed malice, its insane eye fixed upon me. Slowly, I began to question my place within that city on the plateau, hemmed in by jagged peaks. At first I was content to drift as a bodiless observer, watching the solemn men who gathered in the squares to speak of wisdom and fate. Yet soon I longed to belong, to stand among them, to lend my voice to their grave discourse. I told myself, this cannot be a dream. How can I prove that the other life, the house of stone and brick beyond the swamp and the cemetery hill where Polaris peers through my window, is more real than this? One night, as I listened in the great square lined with statues, a transformation seized me. I felt weight, substance. I had a body. And I was no stranger here. These were the streets of Olathoë, proud city of the plateau of Sarkis, between the peaks Noton and Cadifonek. My friend Alos stood before me, his words stirring my soul, for they were the words of a patriot. That night grim tidings had arrived. Dikos had fallen, and the Inuiktos advanced, squat yellow fiends from the western wastes, who for 5 years had ravaged our borders and now pressed upon our towns. They had broken the fortresses at the mountain's foot, and only the plateau remained. Unless each citizen fought with the strength of 10, our kingdom would fall. For these creatures were cunning in war, and knew no honor to restrain their cruelty, unlike our tall, gray-eyed men of Lomar. Alos, commander of all the forces upon the plateau, bore the last hope of our people. He spoke of peril, but also of legacy, reminding the men of Olathoë that their ancestors, driven south from Zobna by the creeping ice, had once swept aside the savage Nofkes, long-armed cannibals who barred their path. Now, as then, courage must prevail. To me, however, Alos denied the sword. My body was frail, prone to fainting under hardship. Yet my eyes were the sharpest in the city, trained by long study of the Pnakotic manuscripts and the wisdom of the Zubnarian fathers. And so, unwilling to leave me idle, Alos entrusted me with a duty second only to battle itself. To the watchtower of Thapnan I was sent, chosen to be the eyes of our army. If the Inuiktos dared to creep through the narrow pass behind Peak Noton, I alone was to raise the fire signal that would rouse the garrison and save Olathoë from sudden ruin. Alone I climbed the tower, for every strong man was needed in the mountain passes below. My mind swam with exhaustion. Days without sleep had left me trembling, yet my resolve held firm. I loved Lomar and the marble city that gleamed between the peaks of Noton and Cadifonek. From the tower's highest chamber I gazed upon the night. The waning moon hung horned and blood-red, shivering through the vapors that drifted above the valley of Banoff. And through the roof's opening glimmered Polaris, pale, alive, leering like a fiend. Its light seemed to whisper, a rhythm of treachery, lulling me toward sleep with a chant that pulsed in my skull. Sleep, watcher, sleep until the spheres have turned their endless 1,000 years. When I return to where I burn, the past shall claw, the stars shall churn. Others will rise to bless, to soothe, to grant forgetfulness. But only when my circle ends shall memory break its door again. I fought against the weight dragging down my eyes, desperate to recall some fragment of the ancient lore I had studied in the Pnakotic manuscripts. But my head sank to my chest, heavy and defeated. When I lifted it again, I was no longer awake. The pole star grinned at me through a window, its gaze cast over the swaying, monstrous trees of a dream swamp, and I have not awakened since. In my shame and despair, I sometimes cry out in madness, pleading with the phantoms around me to wake me before the Inutos creep through the pass behind Noton and seize the citadel. But they are no saviors. They are daemons, cruel and mocking, who laugh at my terror and insist that I do not dream. They jeer while I sleep, even as the squat yellow foe may be advancing in silence. I have failed. I have betrayed Olathoë, the marble jewel of Lomar. I have broken faith with Alos, my friend, my commander.
Yet the shadows of this dream torment me still. They whisper that Lomar never existed, that it is nothing but a figment of my nocturnal mind. They claim that in the lands where Polaris burns high and Aldebaran crawls low across the horizon, there has been nothing but endless ice for thousands of years. No men, no cities, only the squat, frost-blighted creatures they call Esquimaux. And so I writhe in guilty agony, frantic to save the city whose peril grows with every heartbeat, struggling to tear free from this unnatural vision of a house of stone and brick beyond the swamp and the cemetery hill. Above me, Polaris leers, evil, monstrous, its hideous wink like the eye of a lunatic god, straining to deliver a message long forgotten, recalling nothing but the fact that, once, it had something to say.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.